Bitcoins and beer, Bitcoins and beer. Here is Norm, he's a storm as he screams and raves and rants. He is here drinking beers, spilling Bitcoins on his pants. Hello, it's me, Norm, again. Here once again to drink beer and talk about Bitcoin. I know we haven't talked about Bitcoin in a while, but on this podcast we also talk about beer. And that's why I decided for tonight to talk about beer, first of all, and a little bit about history. We're actually going to talk about more about beer than probably Bitcoin tonight. Sorry for all you Bitcoin enthusiasts. Today's beer is called, it's a double IPA by Samuel Adams. You know, one of the crafters of the, well, not crafters, but he actually did sign the Declaration of Independence. It was cousins of our second president, John Adams. And he was also related to the sixth president, because he was a son of the second president, John Quincy Adams. But today we're going to talk about more later in history. There was a 18th Amendment passed. The 18th Amendment, well, let's talk about this after we open up the beer. It's basically New Beer's Eve, because tomorrow's National Beer Day. Opening it with my Sam Adams. Ooh, it's upside down. Sam Adams opener, because it's a Sam Adams beer. Tasty beer from the Boston Brewery, which I believe is still independently owned, which I'm not positive about that. I know they bought up a bunch of other breweries like Magic Hat and some other ones. But, you know, you got to be very careful of the corporate breweries, because they're more about the bottom line, and they throw garbage in your beer. So hopefully this is not one of them. It doesn't taste like one, actually. Very good beer. 8.4%, which is kind of good compared to years ago when the legal limit was 3.2%. But one thing many people may not know, that before Prohibition was renounced with the 22nd Amendment, and before the 18th Amendment was renounced with the 22nd Amendment, FDR, the president at the time in 1933, it was a little over half a year, because I believe that was December 5th when the 22nd Amendment took place, and you could actually buy alcohol here again in the United States, because the 18th Amendment banished it. You know, a lot of people think it was Christian fundamentalists. I think it was more the oil companies not wanting alternative fuel like ethanol, but that's just a conspiracy theory. You don't have to take my word for it. That's just what makes sense to me, because who in their freaking right mind would want to banish alcohol? Even Christian fundamentalists, I don't know. The oil companies have at least they have an agenda to do it, right? Because you can run your car on ethanol, which is what cars were made to be run on in the first place, and they only had to change it to gasoline after Prohibition. But you do your own research. See what makes sense to you. It's only logic and reason telling me that. It's nothing furthermore. Of course, the powers that had the politicians in the pocket to actually do something like that, but who knows? Who knows? Just makes sense. Several years after Depression hit, with the crash of the stock market and the Dust Bowl, Because, the depression was a number of different things. It wasn't only crash of the stock market, it was Dust Bowl, all the produce going away, kind of like what's happening now with our drought here in California. And the market is very fluctuating. So So FDR finally allowed 3.2 beer to be sold on April 7th. April 6th, a lot of stores stayed open to sell it. Well, not stayed open. They opened up early at midnight. And April 6th, people were lined up around the corner. At this time on April 6th in 1933, the state in 1933, to buy 3.2 beer. You know how much beer you have to drink to get drunk off of that? A lot of people really needed it. A lot of people were going to spend their hard-earned money on that. Because they felt they really needed it anyway. And then that's when money was backed by gold and silver, and it actually meant something instead of backed by faith, I guess. Because that's what our money's backed by now. It's not backed by gold and silver. Convinced the rest of the world. Henry Kissinger was actually a very key factor in that, convincing the rest of the world that this paper is backed by something worthy. Basically, your protection. Your protection is backed by military might, and will protect you as long as you buy your oil. There we go with oil again. With this, no matter how you use it. And also, we had the SWIFT system back then, too. That didn't quite start yet. That did not quite start until after World War II. I think that was maybe a little over a decade afterwards the SWIFT system started. That we traded, that in order to send money from one country to another, it didn't matter. It just had to go, the vehicle had to be the US dollar, basically. Even though in the 1970s it started to be backed by nothing because we realized we had the power to do that. Nothing but the paper it was written on, basically. And it had its flaws. It can be counterfeited. It's not worth to counterfeit $1 or $5 or a $10 bill. Probably costs you more to do that. But yeah, it could be counterfeit. There's flaws with it, flaws with the system. We filled our coins with copper and zinc and other less worthy metals. Still precious metal, but less worthy. As time went on, we basically devalued our dollar to nothing. And people borrowed our dollar like China. And they're still borrowing our dollar. I mean, well, they're buying our debt, basically. Not borrowing. They're buying our debt. What do we got to pay them back with? I mean, really, what do we got to pay them back with? If they decide to collect on the debt we owe them, what do we got to pay them back with? They created an alternative SWIFT, I don't know, a week or two ago. People are signing up for it. They have a lot more gold than we do. Allegedly. I'm not sure myself. That's just what I've been reading. Gold and silver. Precious commodities. Which are selling for about this. I was thinking they were selling for lower than it costs to produce them, but actually when you factor in the value, well, the cost of oil right now, it actually probably breaks around even, maybe a little lower, because oil is actually low compared to what it was a few years ago. So my calculation was off, and when I recalculated it, it's probably breaking about even. So it's cheap right now, and you should get it. I've been collecting silver for a while, so I think it's way undervalued. Copper is extremely undervalued, believe it or not. But you can swim a lot farther with silver than copper, and you can swim a lot farther, of course, with gold than silver or copper. And Bitcoin's weightless. Bitcoin's weightless. And it's really not backed by anything either except for the math. And it's not manipulated like the printed dollar bill. It cannot be manipulated. It's a more honest system. And it has a mining value, although it's digital. But you know how many bitcoins are going to be mined a week before they're mined. So if you even play in the futures market, you know for a fact. You don't know that for sure with gold or silver or copper, because you can speculate. But, who knows if there's going to be a cave-in or whatnot, or any tragedy. And this has gone on way too long. Longer than I thought it would take to explain this. But happy New Year's Eve. And hopefully this rant makes sense. Even though I got the Bitcoin right there. Cheers. Satoshi saved is a Satoshi earned.